Ruchi ma'am, now we are live on YouTube. So you can share the link with everyone.
Sir, Iraq for co-host. Ruchi, delegate of Saudi Arabia, Devansh.
Oh, I just admitted him.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Ruchi ma'am, which one you're saying?
Iraq.
He's going to present something?
Yes.
Okay, delegate of Iraq is now the host. Ma'am, anyone else is left out?
No, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Please mute.
Yeah, Nikki.
There's a place in your heart, and I know that it is love. And this place is much brighter than tomorrow. And if you really try, you'll find there's no need to cry. In this place, you feel there's no hurt or sorrow. There are ways to get there if you care enough for the living. Make a little space, make a better place. Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a better place for you and
My warm greeting to all present in this august gathering. Man is the best creation of God, and God has his own ways of testing his creation. The pandemic may have exposed humanity to a long period of affliction, but at the same time, it has renewed our bond with the Creator. Let us today come together to seek divine blessings through this holy hymn, Count Your Blessings.
When upon life's billows you are tempest tossed, when you are discouraged thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. Are you ever burdened with a load of care? Does the cross seem heavy you are called to bear? Count your many blessings, every doubt will fly, and you will keep singing as the days go by. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. So amid the conflict, whether great or small, do not be disheartened, God is over all. Count your many blessings, angels will attend, help and comfort give you to your journey's end. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. And it will surprise you what the Lord has done.
She is a woman who is a born leader. She is dynamic. She is graceful, very strong and compassionate. It's my proud privilege to invite respected Mrs. Aditi Sharma, Principal, CMS Chalk Campus, to welcome the dignitaries and the honorable guests. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Deepa ma'am. A very good afternoon and Jai Jagat to one and all. The quality of a person's life is in direct proportion to their commitment to excellence, regardless of their chosen field of endeavor. Dedicating the spirit of commitment to the cause of the nation and the world, we at CMS Chalk endeavor to host a virtual Model United Nations to honor the relentless contribution of public service in this pandemic. The unprecedented devastation caused by this catastrophe may have shattered many dreams, but we have always held to the hope, the belief, the conviction that there is a better life, a better world beyond the horizon. To strive, to seek, to find, and not to eat. Once again, a very good afternoon to our respected founder manager, Dr. Jagdish Gandhi, founder director, Dr. Mrs. Bharti Gandhi, our president and managing director, Professor Geeta Gandhi Kingdon, and all the wonderful principals from across the campus who have taken out precious time to be here with us this afternoon, and so many guests who have joined us from across the globe, despite having very busy schedules. A very warm welcome and thank you to each one of you. And of course, to these relentless, striving, untiring teachers who have been the force behind today's presentation, and the wonderful children who have been working tirelessly, researching, debating, discussing over this topic that they have selected for the Model United Nations this afternoon. The pandemic may have registered unprecedented losses in every field, but it has eventually taught man the power of social responsibility, integrity, commitment, and service. The policy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam endorses the concept of global citizenship, wherein man must rise above the social, economic, political, and geographical barriers to combat the lethal attack of the virus. In the perspective of this genre of thought, CMS has taken the initiative of hosting virtual Model United Nations. And today, we celebrate the contribution of public servants across the globe. Our young delegates have toiled day and night for a detailed research analysis and have challenged innumerable obstacles to showcase the reality of the positive contribution of public servants during the pandemic. The endeavor of the young learners awakens humanity to a new dawn of hope that the battle is not yet lost and the future of the world rests in safe hands. The virtual platform has undoubtedly been a blessing for the young learners, empowering them with the ability to show fortitude in the face of adversity, to show determination and confidence in the face of obstacles, to choose happiness in the face of sorrow, to show perseverance in the face of despair, and to see opportunities in the face of calamity. Let us join together to applaud the efforts of these young delegates who envisage a better future for the coming generations. We have with us some very special guests who have joined us to witness this virtual Model United Nations being hosted this afternoon. I once again extend a warm welcome to each one of you, and we at Chalk Campus are blessed by your participation as guests who are either alumni of the school or working in assignments related to the United Nations policies, or simply because you have volunteered to partner these young learners in their onward journey as agents of change for a better and peaceful world. Ashish, may we have the slides, please? Thank you, Ashish, and a very warm welcome to each one of you for having taken out time to be here with us. Before we move into the proceedings, I would like to invite Professor Vivek Nagpal, Chairman of Euro-Asian University and Career Network, Netherlands. He's an alumnus of St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. Sir, you may take the floor and address the children with your words of wisdom.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Very well.
Namaskar, Jai Hind, Pranam, and of course, Jai Jagat. I've been very happy to get invited, Aditi ji and Lekhni. Wonderful start, beautiful hymn. I remember my school days in Shimla, St. Edwards, when we used to have the hymn to start the school. I'm from Lucknow. I was born in Lucknow, 1970, and traveled around with my father, who was in the army. To cut a long story short, at 51, I have about 31 years experience in international higher education. And I was thinking of the theme today and what you all are doing on such in a nice way to remember all the people who are in public service, to recognize them, to thank them. Ma'am has very well said that we have been and still are sort of in quite a challenge. And there are many people who have helped us stay safe. And also you all, especially I will
Brown
address.
boys in the building. Shout out Big Bird. You know what time it is? I'm a proud boy. Oh, he didn't shoot. Change ਕੀਤਾ ਫੇਮ ਨੇ ਬਦੇ ਕੇਸ ਕੁਝ ਚੈਰੀ ਬਦੇ ਰੋਜ਼ ਇਨਕੁਆਇਰੀ ਬਦੇ ਨਿਊਜ਼ਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਨੇਮ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਮੈਂ ਪਿੱਛੇ
Mr.
ਮੁੱਕਰ ਦਿਮਾਗ
Singh, can you please mute everybody except sir? Thank you. Sir, I think you've muted yourself. Can you please unmute?
Practically unmuted. Yeah,
Yes,
sorry.
yes, thank you.
Okay, so I will address this to the students, to the young students, especially I think class 11th and 12th are present today, madam.
Right from class 9.
Class 9, great. So I will address all you youngsters from 9th onwards. And of course, it's for my colleagues and others as well. And I would like to share a little personal story. I think it might be interesting also for you as ambassadors of your own school already, because whenever and wherever you go, whatsoever you write, howsoever you speak, and howsoever you interact, whether you are playing with your family and friends, or you are coming to school or going back to your home, you are ambassadors of Montessori School, International Montessori School, Chalk, which has a very good reputation. In fact, I wanted to bring my mom today, and she said to me, no, another time. And I know the school, and she even mentioned the founder's name, which was quite interesting for me. And so it's very well known, not only to people of Lucknow, but all around. And big congratulations for this achievement, which brings a responsibility to the alumni, to the students, because how you will do in your lives as alumni, as professionals, whether you join public service or engineering or study to be a doctor or manager or professor or whatever, musician, artist, your school is your very important identity, and it's a big responsibility. So I think one of my key points would be today on responsibility. From a United Nations point of view as well, you know, we are celebrating that today. And I think as part of a global fraternity, as part of India, as part of Lucknow and your school, you are ambassadors, and I want to warmly say hello to you. And I hope to see you in person soon when I'm in Lucknow next. Number one. Number two, I think one of the things, important things, I'll keep an eye on the time, otherwise please let me know, is the public service. And I would like to say a few words about public service and why it is important and perhaps an interesting area for you also as you think about your future and think about your higher studies and so on. And I'm sure the school has already been exposing you to various career options and study options. And it is something that is an ongoing process. And I can tell you, I'm now 51. And every day I sometimes also keep asking myself what I'm doing. Is this how I want to spend my day and my time? How can I create value? How can I support? How can I make myself useful? In fact, this responsibility itself was one of the biggest reasons that my father permitted me to go abroad in 1990 and 91 to study in Netherlands. And he said that, look, you are supposed to serve the country like we have been doing in our family and our earlier generation. My grandfather was a freedom fighter, father was in the army. He says not everybody has to become an army officer or an executive from Symbiosis. I could have studied in Pune. You can also serve the country as a teacher. You can serve the country as a public servant in any form, in any way. So my life, my adult life has been more or less driven by that clear, you can say, task, duty, I call it, from 1990 onwards till today. How it matters. Okay, am I unmuted now? I have 2-3 minutes left. I will talk about motivation, how it motivated me. See, I was a very average student in Pune also, in my first year and second year. And then when I first time came to Netherlands in 1990, and I saw the huge, I'd never been to Europe before that.
Can we know to identify who is this person?
Madam, can you hear me clearly? Yeah, okay, good. So I'll hold this. So why it's important is that it gives you a direction, it gives you a motivation that you have to work hard, and some people have to work harder than others. They may not be as brilliant as others. That's okay. Everybody's unique. You're all unique. But what helps a lot is to find something, and we should make an effort, teachers as well as parents, to help you find what makes you tick. If it's music, or if it's golf, or if it's sports, or it's teaching, or being a doctor, or whatever. And I would like to say that very, very much today, in addition to responsibility and motivation, it is a lot about calling, about service, about direction, and actually it is about you. And whatever you do your best. You cannot do less than your best. Just do your best, and don't worry if you are not number one or you are not a star. No, not everybody can be. You are fine, but you must try to do your best without getting stressed. And finally, I think these type of programs are very important to give you a wide orientation on global matters, on all kinds of careers as well. And hopefully I've inspired some of you to consider also teaching. Of course, you have very nice principal and other teachers who inspire you on a daily basis, but also to be an international teacher, to train executives and principals and vice chancellors and work with the top of the education sector. And I hope that you will keep in touch I've put my mail also to you, and your school I will try to be in contact with, and it will be my pleasure to help you to plan for your higher studies in Europe and your career in Europe and between Europe and India, like I am doing. Thank you once again, Aditi ma'am, and all colleagues, and it's a pleasure to be part of your program. Thank you. Jayant.
Thank you so much, Professor Nagpal. And definitely we'll be in touch with you. We have a very good ongoing program where we are sending lots of students every year to foreign universities. So we will definitely be in touch and we will seek your assistance in future. Thank you so much for those wonderful words where you were so clear about and you had this address the children that they need to find that one thing which is of interest to them, but at the same time it should be service oriented and towards whatever is their calling, and they need to understand that whatever they do they must try to excel in it. So those wonderful words from you, I'm sure you have inspired many of them, maybe even towards becoming teachers as a future for themselves, to consider it as a future for themselves. Thank you so much, sir. Just before we begin the MUN, we have one more speaker, and I would request Mr. Indra Krishna Dhaon. He is serving as the Chief Technology Officer at Pi-Fi Solutions in Dubai. Mr. Dhawan, it's over to you. If you're there, so.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for inviting me firstly to this prestigious conference. And I am very, very happy to be part of this conference where we are talking to such bright students and a lot of teachers who have inspired so many students. Keeping that in mind, I just want to give a brief background about myself and basically what we can do towards contributing towards the society. I am an alumni of La Martiniere College, Lucknow, and I have very close relationship with CMS back from my swimming days when we used to participate in the interstate events, and CMS used to be most of the time our host for the swimming activities. So representing my team, La Martiniere, and competing against some really, really good swimmers from CMS was a great, it's some memories that I carry and cherish forever. So I have been, my background has been into sports like swimming and golf and diving, where I've represented in nationals and international. And from there, my background was like in science. So I was a PCB student, and I had a lot of interest in computers. So as you can see from my background as well, where what I have been doing is from my career in science, I wanted to pursue molecular biology, but I was very inclined towards golf and cybersecurity and the amount of crimes that were happening back in 2007. This really inspired me in terms of like what I can do in order to combat crimes and stop bad people. So my bachelor's was in BSc Honours in Forensic Computing from University of Wales, Newport in UK. So from there, I honed the skills of like how we can help the law enforcement, the intelligence agencies in terms of combating cybercrime. So nowadays, as we all are well aware about the various crimes which are happening, and especially during this COVID crisis also, where a lot of people are like in the name of doing charity, they are actually duping people of financial fraud. So taking that into picture, what we have been doing is advising the government, advising the banks, advising the people in terms of like how they can safeguard themselves from these kind of attacks and also how you can serve the community. Because the topic for today is like the contribution of the public servants in terms of the world, like we can make the world a better place. So when we are talking about the COVID crisis at present, we have seen the contribution, the government, the teachers, the health workers, everyone has contributed towards serving and making the world a better place. We have seen right from distributing masks to sanitizers to, putting out safety precautions, and now towards building policies, the processes in place. So my advice to the students as well, and also to the teachers would be, since everything nowadays is moving towards technology, right? Right now we are having this conference, which I don't think so would be possible 20 years ago, right? So everything, the dynamics have shifted from technology being like something good to have to now becoming an essential service. And keeping this in perspective, how we can improvise. So I'm a board member of a cyber ed board community, which is having CISOs of around the world in improvising the education sector. So like we are having sometimes the trouble of like, who is interrupting in between, who's playing that kind of music, or who's trying to do that. So we are all the time coming with some innovation in improvising these kind of video collaboration solutions. And at the same time, we are working with the government in improvising policies in terms of like, let's say COVID vaccination drive was there, which started with 60 plus, and then we were advising how to go about 45 plus and 18 plus together. So even though I am in the technology side, I was doing and working with the government officials in India to help them, and working with some people in India to help them get COVID vaccination. So this is a little contribution which I feel a lot of people, even from CMS, I know, that have done similar activities in terms of contributing towards a society and becoming a public servant, even though you're not in civil service, right? So my first advice would be, like Mr. Professor Nagpal has mentioned, that first find that kind of any kind of skill that you want to pursue, any career that you want to pursue. And if you're not sure about which career to pursue, whether it's in technology, whether it's in education, or becoming a public servant, like a civil servant, then always seek for help, right? Don't be shy in asking questions, right? And at the same time, one more point that was excellently put was give your 100% to whatever you pursue. So whenever you are trying to do anything, there will always be hurdles, there will always be challenges, there'll always be something which is going to stop you from achieving potential. Don't let anyone stop you from achieving your potential. Things might not go down the way you expect it to be, but you can always reach your potential by constantly working on your goals, by constantly reminding yourself, yes, you can do it. Always having a positive attitude. And lastly, I just want to say that when it comes to technology, please try to embrace technology, everyone. Whether you have interest in technology or not, there will be a point of life like where you have to use technology. There were people who didn't know how to use mobiles. There were people who don't know how to use laptops, but now everyone is doing so. But when you're doing so, how you do it safely so that you don't hurt yourself or others, because there are a lot of things happening in terms of cyber fraud, cyber bullying, especially since I know the age group that I've joined today is from class 9 onwards. So everyone, I'm sure they're having social media accounts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all this, right? At my time, there was like Messenger, Satyam, and all those things. So when you are online, please do not reveal your identity and everything, all your date of birth and everything on the public. So try to think of this way. Whenever you are uploading anything, even on your email, right? There is always going to be a breach or someone is going to have access to that information. So apart from your banking credentials and things like that, don't put any sensitive material on the internet. Be safe. Have password protection mechanisms in place. Have things like privacy policies in place to ensure that nothing like that happens. Like no one is able to get into your account. So those are some things that I have to just down. And rest, I wish everyone the very best in their career. If anyone is looking to make a career in especially cybersecurity, I'm happy to help anyone who wants to pursue a career in cybersecurity and basically similar to me. So that's something from my end. Rest, I again would like to thank Aditi ma'am for inviting me to this prestigious event. And I wish all students all the best in their bright future ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dhawan. And this is especially to you children, that if you participate in co-curricular or sports activities in school, there is no way in which you should believe or let your teachers make you believe that you are not going to be successful in a career which has science as a background or technology as a background. So go ahead and just do what you want to do, where your heart takes you, but do it with 100% and excel in whatever you do. So thank you once again to both our guests. I would now like to hand over the proceedings to Gauri and Vaibhav. You can, so that they can begin with the deliberations of and what they've been waiting for since a long time now. So over to you, Gauri and Vaibhav.
On behalf of City Montessori School, Chalk Campus, and the wonderful staff and students who call it home, I extend my warm greetings and welcome those from near and far to this virtual Model United Nations. Model United Nations is an academic simulation of the United Nations, where the students play the role of delegates from different countries and attempt to solve real-world issues with the policies and perspective of their assigned countries. It is not only an exercise in research public speaking, but it also helps in developing the leadership skills. It is designed to help the students better understand the diplomacy, international relations, and the UN itself. 23rd June, United Nations Public Service Day. This day is designated by the UN General Assembly to celebrate 23rd June as United Nations Public Service Day. It highlights the contributions of public servants in development process, recognizes the work of public servants, and encourages young people to pursue careers in public sectors. It is this day that we celebrate the services rendered by these good Samaritans. They put in their time and dedication with remarkable acts of service and contribution to humanity. Keeping the significance of this date in mind, the theme for 2021 is Innovating the Future Public Service, New Government Models for a New Era to Reach the SOCs. The person who is employed directly or indirectly by the government, either through appointment or election, is a public servant. The duties of these people are as diverse as the duties and responsibilities of the government. They have an obligation to protect and promote our constitutional ideals enshrined in the preamble. Almost overnight, the COVID-19 pandemic has transformed the work and workplaces of these public servants. Healthcare workers are keeping medical systems functioning and families safe. Civil servants are finding novel ways to design and channelize unprecedented economic stimulus, spending and managing severe spikes in unemployment. The public sector has become accidentally agile with new procedures and protocols governing remote working, accelerated hiring processes, and fast-track mobility programs developed with unprecedented speed. In short term, the focus of the government has been on the twin, that is, need to protect the public servants while maintaining the capacity to deliver on-core and quickly emerging government priorities. The House shall now come to order. Since the roll call has already been taken, we see 16 delegates present. Delegates, the agenda for today is contributions of public servants across the globe during this pandemic. Delegate of India, you are now authorized to take the floor.
Thank you, ma'am.
Noreen, unmute yourself. Thank you.
A global pandemic always has a huge impact on most countries, but India seems to be far worse than most. Scientists are in the front line of battle against COVID-19 pandemic, risking their lives for us. The Department of Agriculture and municipal authorities, in accordance with the police, joined hands to create the makeshift kitchens delivering around thousands of cooked food packets each day. Beyond food security, police officers have taken a new role as public health messengers, and police stations and checkpoints have become sites of India's public health campaign. The personal risk faced by the police has come up due to the interface with potentially affected people while accompanying the health staff for testing drives and other similar first responder duties. Moreover, in the education sector, the union government and different stakeholders of education have made several arrangements including online portals, educational channels, and have explored the possibility of open and distance learning by adopting different digital technologies to cope with the present crisis of COVID 19. Hence, ensuring that the academic activities of schools and colleges do not hamper during the lockdown period. The Department of Military Affairs had put on hold all capital acquisitions for the beginning of the financial year. The Chief of Defense Staff announced that India should minimize costly defense imports and give a chance to domestic production, also making sure not to misrepresent operational requirements. The Finance Minister announced the extension of last dates for filing GST and income tax returns and have announced various relief measures for the poor. Scientists, on the other hand, have worked really hard to combat the virus. Two vaccines received approval for emergency use in India: Covishield, manufactured by Serum Institute of India, and Covaxin, developed by Bharat Biotech. As India fights with this lethal virus, foreign aid in the form of oxygen generators, concentrators, and ventilators have been received by the Ministry of External Affairs. With all this help and hard work of our public servants, we hope to combat the coronavirus situation soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Yes, the Delegate of Russia, on what point do you rise?
On the point of information.
Granted, Delegate.
By the information mentioned, we get to know that India is a country with great population. The number of healthcare workers ranging up to 3 crores, but only 37% of them have been vaccinated, and about 90% have received only the first dose of the vaccine. How will your country vaccinate other healthcare workers?
Thank you for your question. So, the Union government had made a policy stating that the on-site registration for COVID vaccination for all healthcare and frontline workers will be available at government COVID vaccination centers so as to ensure easy vaccination for all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, delegates. Delegate of Italy, you are next on the speakers list.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Once seen as the worst monster, today Italy has been able to be seen by an inclusive policy strategy.
He's not audible.
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Weber, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Once seen as a world monster, today Italy has been able to be seen by an inclusive policy strategy achieved with diligence and cooperation and camaraderie of public service, working under principle. First and foremost, the health workers have managed an early job by going through long working hours, grueling work conditions, patient loads, and the fear of contracting the virus. They also have managed to contribute a wealth of information, disseminating scientific knowledge across the world. Healthcare workers are keeping medical system functioning and facilities safe. And the government also procured the PPE. An extra 20,000 police officers were posted for extra surveillance and strict adherence to the lockdown. And many workers in the private sector and especially medical field were awarded by a childcare voucher of up to 600 euros for children below 12 years and did not take a leave, which again showed their hard work. And many psychologists, therapists circulated a toll-free number for addressing mental repercussions of the lockdown. And as far as the education sector is concerned, the teaching staff pulled up its socks and tapped into a digital platform to guarantee effective learning of the current period. And there is a use of remote teaching using computers and technological tools for the current period. And there is a use of computers also. So, although our country seems to be dealing with the COVID-19 the first day, but we have become a successful one on fighting of this enemy. And also officers in public administration played a new role helping to minimize the positive aspects and the cruises in the direction of social development. So our country soon will be overcome with this problem. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of USA, you can now take the floor.
Thank you, ma'am. COVID-19, the global pandemic which broke out in 2019 in China, has infected about 180 countries with a total of more than 6.5 million people and has taken the lives of around 400,000 people, along with creating health-related uncertainties, adversely affecting travel, disrupting systems, especially the education system, business, economy, and thus employment, and finally, destroying the social lives of people with lockdowns and curfews. The worst hit country peaking the list of active cases in the world is the United States, with a total of 114.6 million infections. Several public servants, such as health officials, teachers, sanitation workers, social welfare officers, etc., regardless of their own losses, have come forward, risking their lives in order to curb its spread. Their contributions include proper planning and effective execution, provision of help in every possible way, and their techniques include provision of information through web and media regarding its spread, prevention, and precautions that are to be taken, distribution of PPE, medical masks, delivery of critical services, minimization of inequality, and development of new technology and making the public aware of its use, such as using robots to minimize contact between people. Contribution towards construction of hospitals with more isolation wards, successful conversion from offline to online schooling in order to sustain learning and thus the economy of the country, enforcement of laws such as mask mandates, prohibition of large-scale gathering and unnecessary rambling, home isolation, closure of borders, rapid testing and vaccination, that all with the facing of several other issues, ranging from shortage of facility to the outbursts of anger by the people when they failed to meet their expectations. Indeed, public service officials deserve massive respect and applause for their contribution. In order to win this battle, we all must stand and work together and ensure strict adherence to the rules and regulations, continuity of public services, provision of service before self-courage and humanness in practice, quick and creative thinking, and work the most for circulating the correct information among all. For the biggest threat today is, I quote, the dangerous epidemic of misinformation. Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary General. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Australia seemed to raise a point here. Delegate, you may proceed with your point.
On point of information, Honorable Chairperson.
Granted, Delegate.
According to a report, at least 100 people gathered at the front of the Idaho Capitol to burn masks in a protest against measures taken to limit infections and deaths caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Some group says mask mandates are a restriction of their freedoms. Health experts says it helps slow the spread of the virus. What are your views about it?
Yes, it's true that mask mandates have caused some form of restriction on the free movement of the people, such as causing suffocation as they were not used to them. What one must abide by is the rule of the authority. Health experts, as everyone is aware, can better see the outcome and the possibilities of not adhering to the rules proposed by them. The deaths caused were due to the unawareness of both the civilians and the authority regarding the spread of the virus during its initial stage. But according to recent reports, people now have become used to wearing masks. They have much faith in the government and thus are willing to go by the rules, and the conditions have become much better. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of New Zealand, you have been recognized and you can now take the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to one and all present here. As the delegate of New Zealand, I would like to express my sincere condolence to everyone who has lost their loved ones due to this global pandemic. As a matter of fact, New Zealand confirmed its first coronavirus case on 28 February 2020. And because of the same, on 25th March 2020, the country went into the lockdown. The head of our state, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, announced that the easiest step a country can take in order to combat this unprecedented virus is staying at home and reducing the contact. The public service has a unique role in our nation. The public servants are responsible for promoting and developing the senior leadership and management capability for the public service. The Ministry of Health had launched free vaccinations for all those who are above the age of 65. Frontline healthcare workers are working with unions and DHBs to identify the improvements that can be made at system level. Our Education Ministry has also launched its distance education to facilitate teachers and students, keeping them out from the reach of this virus. Our system is trying their best to put mental health support in all the schools during these crises. The law continues to support the government. Our law has also imposed certain restrictions on public gatherings like marriages and funerals. The inspectors are also having certain responsibilities under the COVID Act. They help in ensuring that all the businesses and the services meets the requirement of physical distancing. Police tirelessly guard the state border checkpoints in order to stop the transmission of this disease. Moreover, more than 69% of the New Zealanders say that they trust public sector. And the trust of our citizens has resulted that on 8 June 2021, New Zealand goes 100 days without virus. And our Prime Minister secures million doses of Pfizer and votes to get vaccinated as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. The next delegate invited to the floor is Delegate of UK.
Thank you, Chairperson. At first, UK's response to COVID-19 was halting and contradictory. As the pandemic broke out, Prime Minister Boris Johnson had contracted the virus and was away from his office for weeks. But the progress made by the government later received stellar marks. From reporting the highest record of 1820 COVID deaths on 20th January 2021 to flattening the curve to zero on 1st June 2021, UK continues to tackle the global pandemic effectively. This has been made possible only due to the combined efforts of our government, its public officials, and citizens of the nation. To provide economic support to its citizens, the government offered deferrals in tax payments, compensations, and significant rate reductions. On 20th March 2020, Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mr. Rishi Sunak, introduced a furlough scheme in which the government pays 80% of wages to those unable to work during COVID, saving the jobs and income of many citizens. The IT department developed a contact tracing app called NHS COVID-19 for monitoring the spread of COVID in England and Wales. It was effective in preventing over 600,000 COVID cases. On 2nd December 2020, the Medical and Healthcare Agency approved the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, making UK the first nation to approve its usage. The trials to prove the effectiveness of a cheap steroid called dexamethasone had also come from UK. A plan called Global Pandemic Radar was launched in UK to identify COVID variants and to track new diseases across the globe. Over 1 million laptops and tablets were delivered during the lockdown to help children gain education at their homes. An estimated sum of £67 million was raised to support universities and the mental well-being of its students. A new reform was introduced in which the UK borders were digitalized, helping the officials to safely count people in and out. The Metropolitan Police made use of a new digital fine system by which they could fine those flouting the COVID guidelines on spot. This led to a drastic reduction in the number of people going out during lockdown. They not only fined the organizers of social gatherings, but also those who attended them during the lockdown. People could go out only for reasonable reasons. The civil hearings shifted from High Court and Court of Appeal to Zoom, Skype, and other online platforms. The jury made use of these online platforms to serve justice. These policies have helped citizens to gain faith in the government during these times of crisis. The swift vaccine rollout and the praiseworthy efforts of the National Health Service of UK has helped over 60 million citizens to get vaccinated till date. UK strongly believes that through international cooperation and solidarity, the global community can easily defeat the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. May we have the delegate of Argentina to express her views?
As the world marks a year of an intense disruption caused by COVID-19 pandemic, which emerged from Wuhan, the city of China, in December 2019, many countries are yet to overcome its impact. The onset of coronavirus pandemic coincided with the arrival of new government in Argentina, led by Alberto Fernandez. One of the first steps taken by the public servants of Argentina was the recreation of Ministry of Science and Technology. As the cases started ascending in Argentina, with just 502 confirmed cases and 8 fatal deaths, the government announced a compulsory nationwide lockdown in its initial stages. By the means of this law, free circulation of people were forbidden, flights were cancelled, and Argentinian borders were sealed. Many law enforcement officers were put into action to ensure people are not continuing with their regular routine. The nature of crisis was unprecedented. Beyond the short-term repeated health and economic shocks, the effect on human capital, productivity, and education were long-lasting. On the healthcare front, the Argentinian public servants are adopting differentiated territorial approaches like policies surrounding masks and implementation of lockdown wherever necessary. In response to this, the healthcare workers are encouraging the use of COVID-19 bed capacity calculator. The purpose of this tool is to help the duty stations predict their bed capacity and medical staff requirement using the population size of the respective city. On the social economic front, the government is providing a massive fiscal support to protect firms, household, and vulnerable population of the country. They have started reallocating public funding as a measure to help the regions of the country particularly hit by the pandemic. Shutting down the country and especially the economy was seen as a risky move for the newly elected president. Despite the challenging context, the entire judicial system in Argentina showed that they did not believe in the false dilemma of choosing between health or the economy. They led a decisive strategy while preparing a solid healthcare system, scaling up testing, and extending social measures to reduce social economic hardships in the country. The pandemic has significantly disrupted the education sector as well. The government began shutting down schools, colleges, and universities and encouraged learning through electronic media as a measure to mitigate the spread of the outbreak. The previous month of April and May has thus shown how the country can handle the pandemic, with just 435 cases per 10,000 people arising in the last 5 days, which was made possible only by the versatility demonstrated by the public servants of Argentina in different sectors of the society. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Russia, you are next on the speakers list.
Thank you, ma'am. The government of Russia has initially responded to the COVID-19 pandemic in the country, with preventive measures taken to curb the spread of the virus, which involved imposing quarantines, carrying raids on potential virus carriers, and using facial recognition to impose quarantine measures. The Russian federal authorities announced a number of measures designed to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 crisis for businesses and individuals. The mayor of Moscow has issued a separate decree addressing the measures to be taken in order to fight the COVID-19 spread. This decree has been amended several times, most recently on 4th April. Moreover, the Moscow Police City authorities announced that a system of smart QR codes will be developed to track the people moving about the capital, as well as some plans to retrofit additional public hospitals and private clinics for COVID-19 patients. Moscow already has one of the most sophisticated and invasive facial recognition systems in the world, which has been used to monitor individual quarantines. This has been assisted by police officials through constant monitoring and finding those who were caught breaking the rules of the lockdown. Moreover, doctors and the healthcare workers have played an important role in covering the COVID patients and providing them medical care. In spite of facing lack of protective equipment and political support, they continued to treat COVID patients and were seen demanding the government for suitable supply of PPE kits and hospital beds. However, the mental health of the healthcare workers is now becoming an issue of increasing concern, since previous epidemics have shown greater levels of anxiety and stress among the frontline healthcare workers. These were assessed using the GAD-7 and SAV-9 scales. Moreover, the public authorities also limited the number of children that can be together in school cafeterias, and recreation areas were also limited. Masks are not mandatory in all of Russia's 85 regions, though some provinces require both students and teachers to wear them. Thus, public servants have played an important role in curbing the spread of the virus and are working for the safety of Russians till date. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Canada, you are now authorized to take the floor.
The COVID-19 crisis had led all of us to rethink our many decisions. Our trust in a government depends upon the way in which it handles an emergency situation. While across the globe, people's trust in their government has wavered, our trust in a Canadian government has in fact renewed. Our response to the COVID-19 situation was early and efficient, and thus the situation was always under control and was stabilized far early than it has in the other first world countries. But nothing would have been possible without the efforts of our healthcare professionals. They have put their all in coping with the situation. Not only the patients in the hospital were given an excellent treatment, but the government also took care of the home isolated patients efficiently. The Public Health Agency of Canada has shown a lot of concern over the psychological welfare of parents and children, addressing misinformation and educating people, and claimed it as the only way to come out victorious in this fight against the virus. Apps like Free COVID Alert app and launching campaigns like National Public Education have helped spread awareness among people and provide them with timely information about the virus. The Canadian Armed Forces and the Department of National Defense are working with civil authorities at all levels of government. They are giving it their all to protect armed force members from exposure. Canadian researchers are working hard to support international endeavor. Now that the country is recovering, the decline in the economy stands as the biggest concern. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, addressed it as a now primary concern of the country and hopes to tackle the situation soon enough and restore Canada to its former glory. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Italy seemed to raise a point of information for this delegate. Delegate, you may proceed with your point.
So my question for the delegate of Canada, that according to research conducted, statistics shows that there were deaths of 14,000 residents between March 2020 to February 2021, and allegedly they did not receive a proper healthcare facility. So what was the response of the government to such a situation?
Thank you for the question. Several prevention inquiries are now underway in an attempt to figure out what exactly happened in long-term care homes and to recommend changes. Canadian Institute for Health and Information said in a report that staffing shortages at long-term care homes were exacerbated in parts of Canada as a result of staff illness due to COVID-19 and high absenteeism rates. As a response, more than 1,500 members of the Canadian Armed Forces were deployed to 32 of the most severely impacted homes in Ontario and Quebec. The federal government also promised to set new national standard for the long-term care soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Chile, you can now take the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson. The outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic has infected over 180 countries. In the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, public servants are working under life-threatening circumstances. I would like to highlight and acclaim the contribution of public servants in Chile, a country in West and South America. The COVID-19 virus was confirmed to have reached Chile on 3rd March 2020. In order to prevent the spread of COVID-19,
Chilean government has adopted certain measures which involves inhabitants of the Chilean Republic must not leave their houses as an isolation measure between 10 at night and 5 in the morning. People over 80 years must remain in quarantine. And a quarantine is established on all nursing homes from 3rd April 2020 at 5 in the morning. If there is anything that has spread faster than the coronavirus during the pandemic, it has been the recognition of healthcare workers. The deluge of cases in Chile a few months back spread panic as doctors feared they would soon be forced to decide which patient would receive the last available bed and who would have to wait. Public servants in the health sector, including frontline doctors, nurses, virologists, epidemiologists, and other health experts, were some of the first to document this new infection. And by giving information to both public and authorities, it progressively proved vital in the fight against the spread of the virus. The consequences of this crisis has largely impacted children and teenagers. Chile has been one of the most successful countries in America regarding educational achievements and enrollment. Chile has been praised for its market-oriented educational system, and the Chilean Ministry of Education aims to promote the right to quality education and has adopted measures in response to the pandemic. On the other hand, police officers in Chile also worked to stop the spread of COVID-19 by training dogs to detect people that may be infected with the novel coronavirus by sniffing their sweat. In all sectors, public servants have been strategizing and planning amidst the chaos about how to beat the pandemic, save lives, ensure social protection, and sustain economics. The end is far, but I'm sure achievable. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. May we have the Delegate of Brazil to express her views?
Thank you, Chair. The coronavirus is raging in Brazil. The nation stands third on the basis of COVID patients after USA and India. The biggest problems are occurring in the slums of the megacities Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. Yet, the coronavirus now has also reached the indigenous people further inland. In March, the Bayer Live Hub Sao Paulo launched the Mission COVID-19. Bayer joined forces with external partners and distributed 8,000 liters of hand sanitizer. Employees at Uberlandia sites repurposed 3D printers in order to produce masks for the local hospital. Others sewed by hands and donated hundreds of community masks together with friends. Together with 2 other Brazilian companies, Bayer employees organized 80,000 hand disinfectant bottles for the Hospital de Amor Barretos in Sao Paulo, an amount that will cover the hospital's need for about 30 months. In addition, 2,000 Bepanthen products were donated to healthcare workers to help them protect their skin. The employees in Petrolina mobilized to collect financial contributions to help families in need. The amounts were reverted into purchasing 224 units of staple food basket, totaling more than 2,600,000 kilos of food. The chemists at the Fiocruz Institution have been working really hard to prepare a vaccine based on the technology of the pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca. In the field of education, Aprendendo Sempre, which means always learning. It offers access to high-quality educational resources that had been previously scattered across various platforms. Bringing them all together helped many respond more quickly, making this an important underlying investment. FocusMap. FocusMap provides teachers and other content creators a refined set of priorities. When students are learning remotely, they are not getting a full education. So FocusMap emphasizes the core learning most essential to pave the way for a successful return to school.
They were created by Rural Institute's one of Liman Foundation grantees. Apprentice App. Apprentice App provides lesson plans, contents, and exercises directly through the most popular app in Brazil, WhatsApp. More than 60,000 students have already learned through this platform. Support for teachers is being provided by Nova Escola, one of Liman Foundation grantees, through a partnership with Facebook. In the field of judiciary, the National Council of Justice, that is CNJ, has provided a secure digital platform to hold hearings and trial sessions through video conference. In Brazil, many people in prison are in vulnerable groups, such as pregnant and breastfeeding women and elderly people with disabilities. In order to protect the prison population, at least 35,000 people have been removed from prison in emergency character, and at least 4,000 adolescents removed from custodial measures. The police and the armed forces have been working really hard to disperse the crowds and the illegal parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Iraq, you have been recognized and you can now take the floor.
No one knows how long this period of living with the virus will last. Maybe months or even years of uncertainty. But the world after the lockdown is going to be different. There is much to think through, and yet the fallout is unknown. Good evening, Chairperson and the delegates of the House. As the whole world mourns of the novel coronavirus, Iraq's government is trying to do whatever they can. It doesn't give people a chance to criticize them, but to give them a hand to hold. So together we rise again. It has been doing measures including imposing curfews, shutting down schools, closing the borders, etc. The government is targeting private sector workers who are facing financial issues, a cash transfer scheme called Minha. It has also been supporting educational outreach programs and distributing them with hygiene kits. Public employees are heroes in this crisis. They are keeping families safe, businesses afloat, and dealing with the rise in unemployment. Markets, streets, residential areas, schools, mosques in major areas are being disinfected by trained response teams. As Iraq was already suffering with a weak healthcare system, entire Iraq's population has taken a great hit due to this dire situation, and everyone is recovering slowly. UNDP is working to ensure that the law enforcement officers in Iraq are protected from COVID-19 so that they may continue to serve and protect the public, although restrictions related to the coronavirus pandemic have led them to adapt new ways of learning, including virtual as well as on-site modalities. Now, there are limited nighttime curfews in some provinces of Iraq, and people are free to travel abroad to visit retail locations and restaurants. It seems that the government has accepted the situation as its priority has now become the resumption of economic activity. As the government introduced white paper setting out blueprints of reforms in order to address the budget deficit, as well as to create fiscal space and wider reforms, MOA is exploring ways to open the hiring process of agricultural engineers. All of us want to overcome this situation, spread awareness, so that we come out stronger, not broken one day. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of France, you are next on the speakers list.
Thank you, Chairperson. France is one of the European countries hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. This pandemic brought into the light the fragilities, but also the strengths of the French health system. On the one hand, France benefits from a universal health insurance system, a centralized presidential regime with a strong public administration, which in theory means that rapid and countrywide decisions can be made. France also has a relatively high number of healthcare professionals and hospital beds compared to many other European countries. In an effort to halt the spread of the novel coronavirus COVID-19, on March 14, 2020, the French government mandated a shutdown of non-essential businesses and other venues open to the public. The Ministries of Education and Labor organized continuous as well as in apprentice training centers, centers de formation des apprentis, CFAs, and CVET training providers. As part of the deconfinement strategy, all training establishments gradually reopened starting on 11th May 2020, while upper secondary or vocational schools remained closed until 2nd June. In the school track, regular contact is maintained. The head teacher ensures that the student has access to the course materials and is able to carry out his or her homework. The shutdown ended on 11th May 2020. Among the businesses concerned were retail stores, shopping centers, and restaurants. Businesses were authorized to continue their online activities and related deliveries. All businesses, regardless of size, were allowed to defer social security contributions and tax payment, such as corporate income tax due in March, April, and May 2020. Besides health and education workers, all public servants play a role in halting the spread and recovering from the pandemic. This is true regardless of their occupation, whether in the administration of the state like tax collectors, police, or correctional officers, implementing economic and social policies like labor inspectors, providing services to the community like waste collectors, or supporting compulsory social security systems like social workers. As custodians of public goods, public servants are indispensable conduits for the recovery. The COVID-19 pandemic demonstrates the crucial importance of disaster preparedness and that private sector partners cannot manage alone the scope of interventions needed now. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Brazil seemed to raise a point of information for this delegate. Delegate, you may proceed with your point.
Thank you, Chair. France has lifted its mask mandate and COVID curbs to end really soon. So how will you control the third wave?
Thank you for the question. The announcement by French Prime Minister Jean Castex comes as France is registering about 3,900 new virus cases a day, down from 35,000 a day in the March-April peak. Over 58% of France's adult population has received at least one COVID-19 vaccine dose. On 20th June, the European Union nation opened its vaccination programs to 12 to 18-year-olds as part of a push to protect the nation as restrictions are gradually being lifted. Thank you.
Thank you, delegates. The next delegate invited to the floor is Delegate of Afghanistan.
Thank you, ma'am. When COVID-19 reached Afghanistan, it was arriving in a uniquely vulnerable public health setting, with only 9.4 skilled health workers and just 1.9 doctors per 10,000 patients. But this thing has not deterred the resolve and determination of the Afghanistan's health workers who are on the front lines in the battle against COVID-19. As the number of infected in Afghanistan increased, the government of Afghanistan locked down 3 provinces bordering Iran: Herat, Nimroz, and Farah. On March 14, the president of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani, told the public to avoid large public gatherings and to pay more attention to their hygiene in order to prevent the spread of the disease. On March 18, the Ministry of Interior Affairs officially banned all large gatherings. It also ordered the closure of venues which attract large crowds, such as the entertainment areas, swimming pool, fitness clubs, wedding halls, etc. Shortly after that, the Ministry of Interior Affairs officially banned all large. Shortly after that, the Ministry of Interior Affairs implemented quarantine and lockdown in most of the provinces, especially the response teams based across Afghanistan are playing a key role in response to the COVID-19 crisis. These teams are quick at responding to those that either reach for the health facilities or reach out to the call centers to seek advice if they are feeling unwell. Aware of the system, the World Bank moved quickly, fast-tracking a $100 million emergency grant to help Afghanistan strengthen its public health preparedness. This support enabled the Afghan government to reinforce the healthcare services, to detect and isolate COVID-19 cases, and to improve the testing capabilities. Dr. Hussaini, she is a head physician and Afghan refugee. She has been working tirelessly day and night to help the local and the Afghan patients who are affected by the virus. The role of the police during the pandemic also extended. Coronavirus pandemic has transformed the work and the workplace of the public sector in Afghanistan. Public servants are playing a leading role in response to the pandemic. Healthcare workers are keeping the medical system functioning and the families safe throughout the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Australia, you can now take the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson. COVID-19 became a real threat to Australians in March last year, but the federal government responded quickly, closing international borders and implementing a mandatory home isolation program for returning Australian citizens. Australia's COVID-19 response has been the envy of many countries, with Dr. Fauci recently praising the country for being a world leader on containment and management of emerging variants. Even after experiencing a second surge of cases last year, Australia swiftly learned from its mistakes and cases never rose over 1,000 for a population of 25.36 million. All of this has been achieved without vaccinations. Australia began its vaccination program on February 21, 2021. All of this was made possible due to the following contributions. Police were dispatched to homes to check that returned travelers were adhering to quarantine requirements. And when breaches were discovered, Australia quickly moved to a mandatory hotel quarantine system in which hotel rooms were often guarded by police or military. The states and territories also shut their borders down for the first time since 1919 during the Spanish flu pandemic. The early border closures stopped the rapid spread of the virus and allowed for Australia to build a testing and tracing system that was not immediately overwhelmed and therefore very effective at controlling the spread of the virus. Chief health and medical officers were elevated as trusted sources in the public eye, whereas state leaders were also on the front foot with public health, making themselves regularly available for the press. Australian teachers and schools adapted quickly to administer online learning practices, and they advised students to keep their health and safety as their priority. Australian universities delayed their orientation date by a few weeks, and they proposed students to take up their semesters online from their home countries and then start face-to-face classes in Australia once the situation is under control and it is safe for the students to fly. By mid-March, Australian courts were moving to delay hearings in all but the most urgent cases. By March 17, the High Court had resolved not to sit as a full court in Canberra at least until August. Subsequently, most Australian courts have begun to utilize digital solutions to allow virtual hearings. On the economic front, Australian financial institutions supplemented government data with anonymized credit and debit card spend data, allowing decision makers to understand and learn from the real-time data the efficacy of stimulus packages.
Australia's economy expanded at a much faster than expected pace in the final quarter of the last year. Australia has almost become a pandemic success story. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. May we have the Delegate of Saudi Arabia to express his views?
Thank you, Chair. Coronavirus hit Saudi Arabia when its healthcare system was not up to the mark. With only 2.3 doctors, over 10,000 people. Almost overnight, the coronavirus pandemic has transformed the work and workplaces of the public sector. Public servants in Saudi Arabia are playing a leading role in response to the pandemic. Saudi's officials are working very hard with all possible sources to control the effects of the virus. Saudi Arabia's government and private sectors combined developed and launched proximity 19 apps and platforms, serve public health functions, and provide healthcare services. To achieve this, public sector workforces are being asked to work in new ways and new contexts. Line ministers and agencies are learning how to use new technologies and tools on the go, often alongside old procedures and processes. Individual public servants adapting work and personal time to meet families and caring commitments. The public sector here in Saudi Arabia has become accidentally agile with new procedures and processes governing remote working, accelerated planning processes, fast-track mobility programs developed with unprecedented speed. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has expressed that it aims to achieve its vision of the year 2030 objectives through three main pillars: a vibrant society, thriving economy, and an ambitious nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of New Zealand seemed to raise a point of information for this delegate. Delegate of New Zealand, you may proceed with your point.
The Hajj Ministry of Saudi Arabia is going ahead with annual Muslim pilgrimage limited to 60,000 people. I would like to know what measures will the Saudi government take in order to handle the COVID situation during that period?
Thank you for the question. The government of Saudi Arabia has made it clear that Hajj, scheduled to be held at the end of July, would be limited to 60,000 citizens and residents of Saudi Arabia who have been vaccinated and are below the age of 65 years with no chronic illness. So Hajj would be very safe for its devotees. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. The next delegate invited to the floor is Delegate of China.
Thank you, ma'am. As the delegate of China, I would like to speak on the agenda contribution of public servants across the globe during the coronavirus pandemic. I am more than honored to be a part of this meeting and solve the preceding issue at hand today. China was the first country to identify the disease and its pathogen, the first country to impose drastic measures in response to the pandemic, including lockdowns and face mask mandates, and one of the first countries to bring the outbreak under control. Since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, the general public servants, the Chinese government, as well as the scientific community of China were motivated to reform its public health systems. Public servants are playing a leading role in response to the pandemic. Healthcare workers are keeping medical systems functioning and families safe. Civil servants are finding novel ways to design and channel unprecedented economic stimulus spending and manage severe spikes in unemployment. Li Wenshun, the Deputy General Manager of China Railway, said that the railway authorities will be paying attention and will make sure to prevent the spread of the disease through railway stations and trains. The Chinese government and its officials have been investing in new high-technology tracking systems as well. One example is the smartphone application, which is based on a health code color system, which categorizes individuals into 3 color groups and then determine whether they need to be quarantined. With this, I would like to keep the floor open for questions, suggestions, and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, delegate. Seeing no point of information for this delegate, we shall move on. I would now like to invite the vice chairperson to give his concluding remarks before this special session is adjourned.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The current situation has endangered all of mankind. No country was left unaffected. The pandemic unleashed its fury over the entire world. The public and the public servants are working under life-threatening situations. In this unfortunate circumstance, many families lost their loved ones. Restrictions on visiting at hospitals prevented them from saying their goodbyes, and people were buried without the families being there. Many public servants were martyred in their selfless service to the public. Therefore, on behalf of the United Nations, our heartfelt condolences and deep sorrow to the bereaved families. May the souls of the ones lost in the pandemic rest in peace. In this difficult situation, the public servants are the ones who are doing their best to prevent any casualty. From the frontline healthcare workers and public health officials to the teachers, sanitation workers, social welfare officials, and more, the humble public servants have been thrust into spotlight, helping elevate awareness and understanding of the critical role public servants play in everyday life, and in particular during times of severe crisis such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Without a public servant, a nation's resources cannot be put to use effectively for its development. For the achievement of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, effective delivery of public services is required. If not contained, the pandemic will jeopardize the meeting at the 2030 deadline by diverting the resources from development efforts to crisis response. The public servants sit at the heart of ensuring effective response to the crisis by whether as a frontline healthcare worker or in devising strategies or plans to mitigate its impact. In this crisis, the public servants have been and have to be self-sacrificing, trustworthy, risk-taking, versatile, adaptable, creative, transparent, and accountable. And they must be knowledgeable, skilled, persistent, empathetic, collaborative, and competent in the use of technology so as to ensure the continuity of public services, providing service before self with courage and being humane in practice, and could strategically think and plan amidst chaos so that they could build and advance government's credibility and people's trust. Confucius once said that he who wished to secure good of others has already secured his own, which clearly indicates that the public servants are the good doers who help in the creation of a better society. There's no higher calling in terms of a career than public services, which is a chance to make a difference in people's lives and improve the world. Therefore, 23rd June is celebrated as the United Nations Public Service Day to appreciate the services rendered by the public servants around the world. With the powers invested in me as the Vice Chairperson of this session of Model United Nations, I hereby declare this session adjourned. Thank you.
I extend warm greetings to all the dignitaries the distinguished guests, and the honorable delegates. Hope is the secret to success in any human endeavor. And with this hope, the world today stands united to concentrate on one objective, that is the complete eradication of the virus from the face of the earth. This objective is no longer a far-fetched dream, but a stark reality, as proved today by the MUN delegates. The solemn occasion has been graced by the presence of the most distinguished guests who have been kind enough to give their valuable time to us. I consider myself very fortunate to be provided with an opportunity to invite them to address this august gathering. My first guest is the man with a profound dedication towards improving the face of global education. It is none other than our respected founder manager, Dr. Jagdish Gandhi. I request you, sir, to illumine our minds and hearts with your words. Thank you, sir.
Sir, if you could please address all of us with and bless us. Sir, Mr. Gandhi, can you hear us, sir? Geeta ma'am, is sir still in the meeting?
Papa, आपको अब बोलना है. You are requested to speak. While Papa is preparing, if you want, I'll give some of my comments.
Yes,
and in the
yes,
meantime,
please.
you send him a message.
Yes, ma'am, please.
I'd be very happy. Just to say to students, first of all, students, you spoke so well. You had prepared so well. You were eloquent. You were confident. You were, you expressed yourself very well with clarity and concision as well. And I liked so much everybody's statements. I particularly wanted to appreciate what the vice chairperson said towards the end about, so eloquently you expressed about what are the qualities of a public servant that we can admire, that we can celebrate, that we can appreciate. Because it mustn't be presumed that, and we mustn't overly glorify the public servant, because we must also recognize that not all public servants necessarily always fulfill the what is expected of a public servant. There is something known as a public service work ethic. What is the public service work ethic? Each country can define it. I know what it is in some countries. In one country where I have spent quite a lot of time, there the public service work ethic, because my own husband has been in the scientific civil service of that country. There the public service work ethic is described as honesty, impartiality, and integrity. These are the three things that are that define the public service work ethic. All public servants are meant to uphold honesty, integrity, and impartiality. These are the three. So we see that not all, and let us recognize that public servants come in all kinds of different forms. There are public servants that work at the local level. For example, the municipality of our city or of any city or of a village, the panchayat, officers of these entities are public servants at the local level. Then there could be public servants at the level of the state. For example, in India, all the states have the Indian Administrative Services people who are the public servants, or they could be the Indian Police Service, or there could be the Indian Foreign Service. There are PCS officers, there are ICS officers, Provincial Civil Services, and Indian Administrative Services. So then there could be legal officers. All of these people are public servants in the administration. But then, as you all spoke so beautifully about the health services workers, because COVID has been such a major thing in our lives over the past year, it's natural that you should have focused particularly on those public servants that are working in the health sector, because they have worked very sincerely and or many of them very self-sacrificially. As he said, as the vice chairperson of this MUN cogently said, that they have been, been martyrs, some of them, and they genuinely have, because they worked very selflessly. And when it came to it, they knew that their lives would be at a greater risk if they were working with COVID patients, and they still worked. Some of them ran away. It is also a fact that some of them did not stand up to the challenge. And yet those who stood were worthy of so much admiration because they worked selflessly and devotedly and self-sacrificially. So I think it's good to recognize that there are public servants at the international level as well. So even government school teachers are public servants in a sense. And let us also recognize that even if a person is not working in the public sector, they're not even paid by the government, but if they're engaged in work that is of a public service nature, then they can also be regarded as public servants. For example, teachers in private schools. In some countries, private schooling is a big part of the totality of the schooling scene in a country, right? In many countries, this is the case now. So the people who work as teachers in private schools are also public servants, even though in the conventional sense of the term, one may not recognize them as public servants, but in fact, de facto, they are. Even people who work in the health services sector, even if it is in the private domain, they are doing public service. At the international level, people who work for international organizations like the United Nations, like the World Health Organization, like the Universal Postal Union, like the International Monetary Fund, if you look at GATT, which is taken over by the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, all of these people who work for international organizations are international public servants. They're international, administrators. So there's a vast gamut of people. People who work in the armed forces can also be thought of as public servants. Those who are engaged in UN peacekeeping efforts are also. So the one thing that I'd like you to think about as you go away and reflect on what you've prepared is how public service institutions, those that select how the recruitment process for civil services and for public servants can be improved such that it answers the needs of today. Today's need is it's a perennial theme. It's always the need to have impartial and honest and people with integrity, right? So how do you choose people like that? Is that a part of the selection process? Some way of finding out about these things? At least are they on some kind of probation for the first 3 years or so to determine whether they are displaying these values? Or is it the case that if they are academically bright, then that's it, they will forever be civil servants? So, how do we work in? Is academic brilliance the only, should be the only arbiter and decider? How do we keep them motivated? How do we make sure that their initial idealism for service is not dampened over time because of political interference or political forces? So these are all the issues that, as young people thinking about the value of civil servants and of public servants, how we should go about in such a way that they actually end up being the kinds of things that we have described today that they are. Many of them are those wonderful things. And so that they can be even more exemplary in future, how can we arrange the recruitment and the maintenance of their idealism and their professionalism and their sense of duty? Because it's very important that that is also sustained over time. So thank you very much. These are just very few comments, but I'd like to congratulate Mrs. Aditi Sharma, and I'd like to congratulate the teachers, Ms. Diva Naki, and I saw Ms. Nilufar, Mrs.
Ruchi Kapoor.
Ruchi Kapoor.
Actually,
yeah.
Vatsala Saxena ma'am.
Okay.
Mrs. Sharma, they were all involved in that time.
All involved. So, and the vice principal of this great school. And I know that CMS Chalk campus was one of the first campuses last year when the pandemic struck to think of organizing an online model United Nations. And you have a pedigree you have a history of doing great things with your students, empowering them, giving them agency, giving them, making them realize that they are to be young people who will change the world, and doing global citizenship education. So congratulations to your great campus and for this great effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. But I would not like to take the honors. It was Rajajipuram who had done the Model United Nations, and we had done the debate competition with the international delegates.
Oh, I see. It was the debate that you did. I know that Rajajipuram one was the first one to do the MUN, and that was also fantastic. Absolutely. Thank you.
Deepa ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your words of encouragement. May I request Gandhi sir to address?
Papa, I think you're being asked to address, please.
I just spoke to somebody there with, to request sir, but maybe sir is busy. Deepa ma'am, you may ask somebody else to speak.
There are certain lines from the poem written by Robert Frost. I would like to share the lines with you. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. These lines prove that there are certain born leaders who prefer choosing a different path. Amongst the dignitaries who are present here, I would be very lucky to invite the respected principal of GEMS Public School, Gwalior, to share her views with us. May I invite Ma'am Deepa Ahuja to share her views with us.
I think Deepa ma'am is not there. She is left. So you can move to our next speaker.
My next guest here is Muhammad Ali Abbas, respected sir, who is the Human Resource Manager from East Africa. Sir, I kindly request you to address the gathering. And may I invite the next speaker then? My next distinguished guest is respected Mr. Nasir Rohani, who serves on the advisory committee to Portland Office of Economic Opportunity from the USA. He is also a very distinguished member of Portland Climate Action Team. Sir, you are invited to address the gathering.
Thank you very much. I am sitting in this gathering with a really great feeling of emotion, watching these young individuals making their presentations, and really they are giving me hope for our future. I am emotional for two reasons. Number one, even though today I live in US, but I have been having India my home for 11 years. When I was 18, I left my home country, Iran, to India for higher education. And I was in the state of Andhra Pradesh, in a little city of Warangal, close to Hyderabad. And I was doing my research in cooperative banking. And in the year 1985, I left India for US, not as a desire to go for US, but because of necessity of time. At that time, I was really, because of the Iran situation, and I being a member of the Baha'i faith, I was a refugee in India, and India gave me refuge, but I was stateless. I lost my Iranian passport, and the United Nations was really a refuge for me, a place for me to go to, and then be transferred to United States for permanent settlement. So this discussion makes me emotional, both being in India, living India, and having India as my home for such a long time, also as UN being such an important part of my life. You know that humanity goes through several stages of maturity. In the history we look at, there were at one point villages. Each village was a government, was a country by itself. Village Sarpanch was the leader of the whole village, and that's it. And villages, they were separate from each other. That's why there were so many languages and dialects, village by village. But then after growth of humanity, we had state governments, and then national sovereignty and national governments. And today we are at a stage that we need some sort of world governance, some organization overlooking the issues of the whole world. And this is what you guys are talking about. These young students so capably spoke about, and I am so happy about sitting through this and listening. So United Nations is not a fancy organization. It is need of time, is necessity for progress of humanity. When we look at the United Nations today, we see that it has a lot of shortcomings. It is a new organization, even though it is 50 years old, 60 years old, but still it is new. It is a new organization, and every new organization, just like a stage of human growth, is subject to weaknesses and problems. Some people complain that the United Nations is a puppet of several superpowers. Some others say that the United Nations has corruption. But the United Nations is working, and I am a testimony of this growth of the United Nations, I would like to say. I just give example of growth of United Nations to my own children. I have 4 children, and one of my kids, when he was 3 years old, still he was in diaper. And I was really disappointed. One day I sat to him and I talked to him. I said, my boy, you are now 3 years old, 3.5 years old, you are still in diaper. And it is really difficult for you. Difficult for us to see you still not containing yourself. And his response was, he couldn't help it. He is growing. So he is now a big man. He's 26 years old. He is a student of dentistry, but he was at that time going through those stages. And we really have to understand that the United Nations is a need of time. And sometimes ago, as a member of Baha'i faith, I was asked to talk about UN and what are the points that we as individuals have to look at UN. I know that you are all tired, there is a long program, but I would like to go through the points that I spoke about. And the first point I said, first and foremost, everybody should become a believer in peace. Number 2 is we should not be partisan in our political views and arguments. We should not argue about issues. We must look at the points of unity. We must believe that all people are inherently good. We should not say that people of this country are this and people of that country are such. We are all members of one human family. Then I would like to point to gentlemen, to men. Respect women. Women are the other wing of humanity, and humanity needs two wings to fly. And if men do not respect women, the bird of humanity will not fly. And I would like to point to ladies, and that is educate. You will become, you young girls and women, you are either mothers or will be mothers of the future. Educate your boys to respect both sexes and become respectful to women. Again, this is the bird of family that grows and flies. Without two wings, humanity cannot fly. Then I would like to suggest that befriend with people of other races, other creeds, other castes, other nationalities, and be at the same table with them. And if we break the barrier of nationalism, racism, casteism, and all these religious differences, and be looking at each other as members of one human family, we would have hope for the future. There are many other things that I would like to share, but really I'm so grateful to all of you for this time, for sharing, and I pray for the success of your school, for success of each and every one of you students, and thank you very much for this time.
Thank you, sir, for your encouraging words. We are indeed blessed to have you here this evening. I would now like to invite our respected founder manager, Dr. Jagdish Gandhi, to illumine our minds and hearts with his precious words.
सर आपको बोलना है क्या?
हाँ बोलना है। क्या मैं बोल सकता हूँ?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
सबसे पहले तो मैं अदिति शर्मा दीदी जी को बहुत बहुत बधाई देना चाहता हूँ इस मॉडल यूनाइटेड नेशंस को आयोजित करने के लिए ऑन द इम्पोर्टेंस ऑफ पब्लिक सर्वेंट्स। हमारे जो कोरोना वॉरियर्स हैं, इस कोरोना के पीरियड में डॉक्टर्स हैं, नर्सेज हैं और तमाम लोग जिन्होंने बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण सेवा की, जबकि बहुत सारे लोग कह रहे थे कि हम हॉस्पिटल की तरफ नहीं जाएंगे, हम घर से नहीं निकलेंगे, हम ऑफिस में नहीं जाएंगे क्योंकि कोरोना हो जाएगा। और ये कोरोना वॉरियर्स हॉस्पिटल्स में जाके, ये नर्सेज हॉस्पिटल्स में जाके सेवा कर रही थी मरीजों की, जो कोरोना के पेशेंट्स, और हजारों लाखों पेशेंट्स को डॉक्टर्स ने और नर्सेज ने बचा दिया, उनको नया जीवन दे दिया। यदि ये भी डर करके बैठ जाते और कई लोग वर्क फ्रॉम होम, हम घर से काम करेंगे, यदि डॉक्टर्स भी ये कर देते कि वर्क फ्रॉम होम, कोई एडवाइस लेना है तो टेलीफोन पर ले लीजिए, और नर्सेज भी यही करती, तो मेरे ख्याल से एक भी मरीज बच नहीं पाता। लोगों को कोरोना हुआ है, सबकी मृत्यु हो जाती। तो पब्लिक सर्वेंट को, सरकारी नौकरी नहीं, जो भी पब्लिक में काम करते हैं उनकी बड़ी जिम्मेवारी है। समाज की सेवा जो करते हैं उनकी बहुत बड़ी जिम्मेवारी है, वो सेवा करें। हाँ, ये जरूर है कि अपनी सुरक्षा करें, पीपी किट पहनना जरूरी था, मास्क लगाना जरूरी था, डिस्टेंस उनके लिए भी बनाना जरूरी था। तो वो मैं भी हॉस्पिटल में रहा 1 महीने तक, किस तरह डॉक्टर्स ने और नर्सेज ने सेवा की है, पीजीआई में मैं था, मैं जीवन पर्यंत उनकी सेवा को भूल नहीं सकता, और बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिला। यदि ये लोग अपनी सुरक्षा करते हुए मरीजों की
जान बचा रहे हैं। मेरी भी जान डॉक्टर्स ने और नर्सेस ने बचाई। तो हम लोगों को भी ये सीखना चाहिए इनसे सबक कि हम भी सेवा के काम करें। यहाँ जो बच्चे बैठे हैं, खास तौर से बच्चों से मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा कि सेवा बहुत बड़ी चीज है और अपने जीवन में सेवा का पाठ ये सीख ले तो वो बहुत महान बनेगी। संसार में जितने भी महान पुरुष हुए, समाज की सेवा के कारण महान पुरुष हुए, चाहे महात्मा गांधी हो, चाहे मदर तेरेसा को ले, या और किसी को भी ले ले, ये जो महान बने ये केवल सेवा के कारण बने। बच्चों से मेरा यही कहना है कि दे शुड लर्न कि हमें समाज की सेवा करनी है, पब्लिक की सेवा करनी है और सेवा की भावना को जितना आप बढ़ाएंगे उतना ईश्वर के भी आशीर्वाद मिलेंगे और आप जितना समाज की सेवा करें उतना ही ईश्वर के निकट हो जाएंगे। ईश्वर की निकटता के लिए सेवा बहुत हमारी सहायक होती है ईश्वर के निकटता दिलाने। तो सेवा की भावना होनी चाहिए और सेवा करने के लिए हमें अपनी तैयारी करनी चाहिए। ये जो CMS में आप पढ़ रहे हैं ये बहुत अच्छा एक आपका भाग्य है कि आप CMS में पढ़ रहे हैं। यहाँ बहुत सारी चीजें समाज की सेवा की सिखाई जाती है। जैसे उदाहरण के लिए आपकी वर्ल्ड की पार्लियामेंट होती है, उस पार्लियामेंट में आपके मस्तिष्क में ये विचार डाले जाते हैं कि आपको बड़े होकर एक वर्ल्ड की पार्लियामेंट बनानी है जिससे कि विश्व की जो मानव जाति की समस्याएं हैं उनको आप हल कर सकें। आप बड़े होकर और भी आगे बढ़े, विश्व की एक सरकार बना सके। इसी तरह आप वर्ल्ड के सारे धर्मों की एकता के लिए काम करें। सारे धर्मों का स्रोत एक परमात्मा है, एक खुदा है, एक अल्लाह है, उसके नाम अनेक हैं लेकिन वो एक है। तो ये बहुत जरूरी है बच्चों को सीखना जो CMS में आपको सिखाया जा रहा है। ये आज की सबसे बड़ी सेवा है कि ये आपको सारे धर्मों के अंदर सद्भावना पैदा हो, इसको आप करें। बहुत जरूरत है। ये भी समाज की बहुत बड़ी ईश्वर की समाज की सेवा हो। विश्व एकता के लिए काम करें। वर्ल्ड यूनिटी की आपकी प्रेयर होती है, उसमें विश्व एकता का सबक आप सीखते हैं और विश्व एकता होगी तो विश्व में शांति आएगी। पीस इज द बाई प्रोडक्ट ऑफ यूनिटी और यूनिटी चाहिए तो यूनिटी का फल, पीस चाहिए तो पीस का फल यूनिटी के वृक्ष में लगता है। तो क्योंकि पीस इज द बाई प्रोडक्ट ऑफ यूनिटी। तो परिवार में एकता हो, माता पिता भाई बहन दादा दादी सब में सद्भावना हो, सबके हृदय पवित्र हो, सब एक हो, तो परिवार में एकता हो, मोहल्ले में एकता हो। आप बच्चे हैं, पढ़ते हैं स्कूल में, आप बच्चों में एकता हो। सब जगह एकता का एक संदेश दीजिए। जातियों की एकता, धर्मों की एकता, मानववाद की एकता, विश्व एकता के लिए काम करें। ये सब चीजें सीखते हैं, ये सब समाज की सेवा है। प्यारे बच्चों, आप बहुत भाग्यशाली हैं कि CMS में आपको ये सारी चीजें सेवा समाज की करने के लिए, समाज को सुंदर बनाने के लिए आपका मार्गदर्शन यहाँ पर होता है। एक बार पुनः आदरणीय अदिति शर्मा दीदी जी को बधाई देता हूं कि इन्होंने बहुत सारे देशों के तमाम हमारे साथियों को इसमें शामिल कराया डिस्कशन में, और जो भी काम करती हैं बहुत उच्च कोटि का करती है। She never does anything half-heartedly और यूनिक करती है। तो आज का ये कार्यक्रम भी यूनिक था, और जितनी भी बधाइयाँ हमारी अदिति शर्मा दीदी को और उनके टीचर्स को दी जाए, जिन्होंने बच्चों के लिए इतना ये सुंदर कार्यक्रम आयोजित किया। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद एक बार पुनः अदिति शर्मा दीदी।
Thank you so much, sir, for those kind words, and of course, always being so motivating and encouraging for all of us. Diva ma'am.
Thank you, sir. I warmly welcome the Brazilian team of CONTA 2020. This team has been closely associated with CONTA since many years. I invite Sir Weber Campos de Souza to share his views with us. And I hope sir is there.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
So good to see you. Professor Weber, we can hear you. You may continue. Professor, I think you've muted yourself. Kindly unmute. Okay. Professor has just dropped a message. He needs a moment.
Hi. The teacher's internet was with problem. Can I speak in their place? His place?
Absolutely. Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I would like to thank, in name of our school, Nossa Senhora de Fátima, the City Montessori School, the principals for inviting us, the students of the wonderful presentations. It was such a pleasure for us to be invited last year and again. I hope we can meet as soon as possible. Thank you.
We hope so too, dear. We'll be meeting very soon. We still have, and I'm so glad and thankful to Samvida ma'am, I think is still with us. Ma'am, if you could please very kindly bless the children. Samvida ma'am, if you can hear me. Okay, Diva ma'am, then you can ask for the vote of thanks.
Ma'am, can we also invite the principals, distinguished principals who have come from other campuses?
That is what only Samvida ma'am is here. The others have left. So it's been a long day. So we can just wind up now. And Samvida ma'am is not responding. So
thank you, ma'am. It has been a wonderful evening. And I now invite our respected Vice Principal ma'am to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Diva, for giving me this opportunity. I really take this privilege to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our eminent guests from the nation and from across the nation. Professor Vivek Nagpal and Mr. Indra Krishnan Dhawan, and Mr. Nasir Rouhani. Thank you very much for blessing the students with your motivational talk. Professor Nagpal very rightly said that we should do our best without getting stressed, and a responsible person can serve the nation anyway. Very rightly said, sir. Moving further, our global educational leaders, our founder manager, Dr. Jagdish Gandhi, founder director, Dr. Mrs. Bharti Gandhi, President and Managing Director, Professor Geeta Gandhi Kingdon, who is also a chair of Education, Economics and International Development, UCL, Institute of Education, University of London, and our Chief Executive Officer of CMS, Mr. Roshan Gandhi Faroli. Thank you, each one of you, for empowering, encouraging, and supporting the efforts of all of us and blessing us throughout. Respected principals of various branches, I could spot Mrs. Jayashri Krishnan, Mrs. Bonita Joel, Mrs. Dipali Gautam, Mrs. Samriddha Adhikari, Mrs. Sangeeta Banerjee, Mrs. Vera Hajela, and Mrs. Nisha Pandey. Thank you, ma'am, for being here with us and boosting the morale of the students by your presence. Thank you to the staff of various branches who are here to see the program. A very big thank you to our ex-students, Sabika and Vilayat Ali Rizvi of 2019-20 batch. Your sense of belongingness to school is highly appreciated. MUN has been, Sabika, your baby, I think. You had worked hard to present the first MUN from Chalk campus, but this COVID-19 pandemic brought everything to a standstill. Finally, you got an opportunity to showcase your talent, to help and guide your juniors. A huge thank you to Sabika and Vilayat. You will always be remembered. Team of students from class 9 to class 12, and I must name them: Gauri, who was the chairperson, Vaibhav, vice chairperson, Nooran, Prerak, Innama, Khadija, Wahiba, Limra, Samya, Samra, Sara, Insia, Zara, Amra, Taskeen, Achal, Wahiba, Zainab, and Devansh. Thank you, each one of you, for apprising the audience with the contribution of public servants across the globe during this pandemic. Your efforts, the efforts made by you, and the enthusiasm that you showed in participating in today's deliberation is highly appreciated. To accomplish any task, a team of willing staff and teachers is very essential. So a team led by the in charge, Ms. Nilofer Hussain, along with the English staff, Ms. Ruchi Kapoor, Ms. Leena Chatterjee, Ms. Diva Naki, Mrs. Sunita Sharma, and Mrs. Vatsala Saxena. Thank you, teachers, for patiently investing your time and for staying committed throughout in guiding and helping the students. A very special thank you to Ms. Ruchi Kapoor. I think she is, in a true sense, an amazing advocate of students. She gets so involved that even the students start enjoying working for any task that is given to them. Thank you, Ruchi, for that. Our computer science teacher, Mr. D.K. Singh, along with the IT assistant, Ashish Agarwal, for all the technical assistance provided. And last but not the least, to our most respected and beloved principal, Ma'am Aditi Sharma, your devotion, dedication, and perseverance to raise the standards of the branch is highly appreciated, ma'am. It's highly praiseworthy. It's because of the determination and trust that each teacher of the branch gets motivated to put in their best. Thank you, ma'am, for guiding all of us. With these words, I end my vote of thanks.
Thank you, Shamama ma'am. But it's always a teamwork, as you said at the beginning, and each one puts in their best foot forward and miracles happen. So thank you once again to this wonderful team of English teachers who I am aware was taking rehearsals from 8:30 to 9:30 to even 10 every day in the evening, because morning classes were on. There were alumni which were involved. There were students whose